These are the best M&Ms. And I will fight you if you disagree. Because the caramel M&Ms are disgusting. The mini M&Ms are okay, but peanut is where it's at. So we're going to be talking in kind of generalizations. And there's a couple reasons why. One, if we really wanted to get down into the nitty gritty of every little detail about this topic, we'd be here for like 50 hours. Nobody wants to do that. And two, really, every time you get into the specifics, you open yourself up to other specifics. And there's going to be certain examples on both sides that outperform certain examples on other sides. So there's going to be specific single-ended DAX and amps that outperform specific balanced DAX and amps and vice versa. So it goes both ways. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of generic benefits and detriments to each side of things. So on the balance side of things, generally speaking, they're going to have some of the best options at the mid to high priced tier or bracket, or for price bracket. And as a result of both the amplification side of things and the actual cable side of things, you're generally going to get a lower noise floor as opposed to single-ended. Now, some of the single-ended benefits are, generally speaking, the lower priced options like the $0 to $200 category. The single-ended options there are pretty much all better than the balanced options at that same price tag. You also have more versatile use of headphones. Not every headphone can be balanced. DT1990s are a great example. Some of the other Bayer Dynamics that have hardwired cables. Anything really that has a hardwired cable. And the cable and accessory cost is actually cheaper for single-ended. If you're comparing the cost of XLR cables versus RCA and aftermarket headphone cables, for example, the HC600, the cheapest single-ended cable I can find is right about $15. And the cheapest balanced cable that I can find on Amazon is about $50 for the same headphone. And that's pretty much what you're going to see for just about every headphone, unless you have like a specialized connector like a Limo connector on a Focal Utopia, to where it's very unique. There's not too many aftermarket manufacturers, so any cable at all is generally going to be expensive for those. Okay, so now on the downsides to balanced, you're going to be talking about proprietary connectors where you either have to buy an aftermarket cable. A few headphones come with balanced connectors, so you have to have a headphone that's actually capable of running it. Then you have to buy an expensive cable for it. And then on top of that, there's generally a little bit of a price premium for balanced amps and balanced DACs on average. Like there's not many or any, there might be one or two, but not that I'm aware of, but there's like dozens probably of $100 or single-ended DACs. And I can't think of a single balanced DAC that's any good at $100. Now that doesn't mean they're not out there. I'm just not informed as to which ones they would be. I think one of the cheapest is like the Shelly Labs. That is a decent balanced DAC. Now regarding the downsides of single-ended, there really aren't that many. The only real downsides that I can see are, one, going to be interference, which is kind of arguable depending on how long your cable is and how complicated, everything else around your cable is going on. Like if you just have a desktop or a couch and you have a cable running from your amp to your headphone, you're probably going to be fine. But in certain circumstances, you can get a little bit more interference if you're running a long, RCA cable between your DAC and your amplifier. Now, really the only major downside that I can consider single-ended to have is that a lot of the nicer amplifiers, like 300 and up, most of the really nice options in those areas are generally going to be balanced anyways. So it's almost worth investing just to get like the THX, for example. Like that amp has a great single-ended performance. But if you're getting it for its single-ended performance, you're kind of shortchanging yourself because the balance performance on there is just so much better. It's more clean, it's more powerful. In my opinion, it sounds better. That's really what you would pay for that amplifier. And if you want amp, 9-watt balance amplifier, 3-watt single-ended. Now, of course, we're talking about generalizations. There are other counter examples that have better single-ended performance than balanced performance, but you get the point. Now, here's the fun bit, is the actual analysis of value and whether or not it's actually worth investing in one particular technology or the other. If you want the totality of sound quality, generally speaking, you're going to want to go balanced. The DACs, the really nice DACs that are balanced, have amazing performance. The really nice amplifiers that are balanced have amazing performance. In general, better than single-ended. However, I am going to crown single-ended as the actual winner of this competition because you get a better bang for your buck, and I think that is better for the end user. And also, there's a big caveat with, with balanced performance is you literally cannot use every headphone for it. And that to me is a huge downside. There are headphones that I want to use balanced, but I simply can't. 1990s, again, they just can't run balanced. So single-ended, in my opinion, is going to be the overall winner, while recognizing and appreciating and saying that XLR balance is probably, in most scenarios, going to yield the best result. It's that time of the year again for Goose to make a little more annoying Goose, which actually started yellow. Don't know if you guys knew that. Speaking of goose and geese, English really needs to get their shit together with, like, you got octopus and octopi, ox and oxen, goose and geese, duck and just ducks. There's so many different options. Actually, Brian Regan has, I think it's Brian Regan. He has a really funny little comedy bit about that. But real quick before this video wraps up, despite the conclusion, I do want to make a couple of qualifying statements, and not really corrections necessarily, but things to think about. And that is that even though single-ended is the more versatile option, it is worth noting, and pretty important actually, that most balanced amplifiers out there do have a single-ended option also available. They usually have a 1/4 inch. So there's that. It's also worth noting that nowadays single-ended options like the JDS Labs Atom and the Liquid Spark are getting so good in terms of measurements that they're kind of hard to argue with. Now, they don't draw on the raw power numbers of something like a THX or an NFB1 or a Jotunheim or something like that. And the THX does measure pretty well, but specifically like regarding the Atom and the Spark, both of those things measure phenomenally well. And even though in the higher price category, what you really end up paying for is either convenience of inputs and outputs, there's also material, and then you are generally, most of the time, paying for power. And then if it's a good amp, it's going to be power matched with cleanliness or, you know, really good measurements or something along those lines. So yeah, and I'm going to leave you with a very specific question. You can also leave your comment, but I really want an answer to this question just to help gauge audience feedback here. What do you guys use? Are you a no amp type of person? Are you a single-ended amp? Or are you a balance amp type of guy? I'm really curious. If you do want to consider supporting what I do, there is Instagram, there is Twitter, there is Facebook, there is Patreon. And yeah, thanks very much, guys. Links to everything down below. My name's Josh, signing off.